all injuries dealt with in the public healthcare system. A quarter of all injuries occurred in the age group 10 to 19. Mr. Speaker, 65.7% of all cases of sexual assault came from that age group. 65.7% of adolescents between 10 and 19. That is the age group that is being most affected by sexual assault. 65.7%. Mr. Speaker, adolescents accounted for 20% of antenatal and postnatal visits to health facilities. And the adolescent birth rate in Jamaica is 77 per thousand. 77 per thousand. Mr. Speaker, accidents, violence, and adolescent pregnancies are all preventable costs on our healthcare system. Again, this is a problem of personal responsibility. More so, a problem of parental responsibility. Our children are being maimed and injured, often by other children. Our teenage girls are being sexually harassed, 65.7% of all cases, usually by adults. And as said before, sometimes family members. We must take a hard line on this. Mr. Speaker, we are happy to observe the sustained decline in the adolescent mother birth rate from 129 per thousand in 1985 to 77.3 per thousand in 2010. But, Mr. Speaker, it is still too high. The country must be unequivocal in its position against adolescent pregnancy. We must encourage our young girls to stay in school longer, secure an income, and then have the children they can afford. This is critical to moving our people from poverty to prosperity. Mr. Speaker, it is no accident that Singapore long ago got on top of this social and cultural situation. In 1985, when our adolescent birth rate was 129 per thousand, theirs was 11 per thousand. Per thousand, 11 per thousand. No, it's per thousand, it's an error there, it's per thousand. And today, Mr. Speaker, it is 11 per thousand. But today, Mr. Speaker, Singapore's adolescent birth rate is 6 per thousand. 6 per thousand. There are some social and cultural beliefs, Mr. Speaker, that as a people we hold on to, which our leaders fear to challenge because of the politics of poverty. Then we turn around and wonder, why are we poor? Having children before you have the means to afford them and provide a certain quality of life actually decreases the life chances of both the child and the parent. It increases the social cost to everyone else and continues the cycle of poverty. Mr. Speaker, let me suggest to the Prime Minister and the Minister of Health that the National Family Planning Board should be specifically mandated to conduct a public education campaign to rapidly reduce adolescent pregnancies in Jamaica. Mr. Speaker, we've done it before. We did it in the 1980s with the unforgettable campaign, 2 is better than too many. This agency should be retasked to focus on that specific segment of the population. We can't police it. Mr. Speaker, but we can give our adolescents, our teenagers, we can give them information so that they can make the right decision. I know it is happening in the society where our young girls are making the decision to stay longer in schools. But we must, Mr. Speaker, increase the intensity of the change in this area. Mr. Speaker, a healthy society is a productive society. Health policy is therefore critical to a growth strategy. You hear that, Minister of Finance? A health strategy, a health policy is critical to any growth strategy. In two instances, the government, by the way in which it has handled the issues confronting the health sector, has negatively impacted the country's growth prospects. First, the government mishandled the chikungunya epidemic. Minister Ferguson knew about the possible epidemic 2 years before the outbreak. The government, led by Prime Minister Portia Simpson-Miller, hosted a regional conference here in Kingston with Dr. Ferguson as the point minister on the chickpea virus and its spread throughout the region. Mr. Speaker, with the forewarning, with information in hand, the government did absolutely nothing. Nothing. Mr. Speaker, the minister stuck his head in the sand, and the Prime Minister covered his head with more sand. It is not until the epidemic reached crisis proportion that there was even an attempt to coordinate a response. We must always remember the greater value of the public health system is prevention rather than cure. It will come as no surprise if the next report on economic performance reflects the negative impact of sick days on productivity and output. This, Mr. Speaker, cannot be blamed on any drought or global recession. This would be the direct result of the government's incompetence and mismanagement of the health sector. Mr. Speaker, let us boldly take on the challenge of fixing health care in Jamaica. Let us do so in a practical way. Let us step up to the National Health Insurance for Wellness Advancement. Let us, as a people, take responsibility for our health and well-being so that we can move Jamaica from poverty to prosperity. Mr. Speaker, I led a team from the opposition on a tour of the Riverton City dump in May of last year. Mr. Speaker, the recent fire at the Riverton City dump is the worst we have ever seen. It had a far-reaching and devastating impact on our children, businesses, and the population as a whole. Notwithstanding the allegations that the fires were deliberately set, the public is angry at the nonchalance and casual nature of the government's response. There was no sense of urgency, no decisive action, no confidence-inspiring response, just as we saw with the chikungunya outbreak. Mr. Speaker, under the